Introduction. Do you know why the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, stands as one of the most significant military campaigns of the medieval period? Do you know who its notable leaders were and what its strategic battles were? Why did the Third Crusade have a profound impact on both the Christian and Muslim worlds? Let us delve into the origins, events, and outcomes of the Third Crusade, analyzing the perspectives of various historical sources and schools of thought to provide a comprehensive understanding of this pivotal conflict. Historical context and origins. The fall of Jerusalem. The catalyst for the Third Crusade was the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187. The city, which held immense religious significance for Christians, Jews, and Muslims, had been under Christian control since the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, unified the Muslim forces and recaptured Jerusalem after the decisive Battle of Hattin. This event sent shockwaves through Christendom, prompting Pope Gregory VIII to issue the papal bull Audita Tremendi, calling for a new crusade to reclaim the Holy Land. Jerusalem's significance cannot be overstated. For Christians, it was the site of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, while for Muslims, it was home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, the latter marking the spot from which Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven during the night journey. The fall of such a pivotal city not only had spiritual repercussions but also geopolitical ones, as it threatened the existence of the Crusader states established during the First Crusade. Motivations for the Crusade. The motivations behind the Third Crusade were multifaceted. Religious fervor and the desire to reclaim Jerusalem were primary driving forces. However, political and economic factors also played significant roles. European monarchs saw the Crusade as an opportunity to assert their dominance, gain prestige, and expand their territories. Additionally, the Crusade provided a means to channel the military energies of restless knights and nobles into a common cause. Religious zeal was fueled by the promise of indulgences, a concept propagated by the Church where those who took up the cross were granted remission of their sins. This spiritual incentive was compelling for many, offering eternal salvation in exchange for military service. Economically, the Crusade opened new avenues for trade and wealth acquisition. Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa, which provided naval support, saw the Crusade as an opportunity to expand their trade networks. The promise of spoils of war, land grants, and other material benefits also attracted many to the cause. The role of the papacy. The papacy played a critical role in the organization and promotion of the Third Crusade. Pope Gregory VIII's call for the Crusade emphasized the spiritual rewards for participants, including the remission of sins. This religious motivation was a powerful incentive for many crusaders. The papacy also facilitated the coordination and funding of the crusade, leveraging its influence across Europe to garner support from various monarchs and nobility. Papal bulls, sermons, and church decrees were instrumental in rallying support. The Church's involvement underscored the perceived divine mandate of the crusade, framing it as a holy war sanctioned by God. The papacy's ability to unite disparate European powers under a common religious cause was a testament to its influence during the medieval period. Political and social climate in Europe. The late 12th century was a period of political fragmentation and feudal conflict in Europe. The call for the Third Crusade provided a unifying cause that transcended local disputes and rivalries. Monarchs like Richard I of England and Philip II of France saw the Crusade as an opportunity to project their power and influence on an international stage. Feudal lords and knights were motivated by both piety and the promise of adventure and wealth. The social structure of feudal Europe, with its emphasis on martial prowess and loyalty to one's lord, aligned well with the crusading ethos. The crusade offered a means for younger sons of nobility who had little prospect of inheriting land to gain wealth and status. The social and economic fabric of medieval Europe was deeply intertwined with the crusading movement. Towns and cities benefited from the increased demand for supplies and services, while the nobility leveraged the crusade to consolidate their power and influence. The promise of indulgences also appealed to the broader populace, who saw participation in the Crusade as a way to secure their salvation. Key figures and leadership. Richard the Lionheart. Richard I of England, known as Richard the Lionheart, was one of the most prominent leaders of the Third Crusade. His reputation as a skilled warrior and tactician earned him the respect of both his allies and enemies. Richard's commitment to the Crusade was unwavering, and he played a crucial role in several key battles, including the Siege of Acre and the Battle of Arsuf. His leadership style, characterized by boldness and decisiveness, made him a formidable figure in the crusading effort. Richard's journey to the Holy Land was fraught with challenges. He faced logistical difficulties, including securing supplies and maintaining the morale of his troops. His relationship with other Crusader leaders was also complex, marked by both cooperation and rivalry. Despite these challenges, Richard's military acumen and charismatic leadership were instrumental in the successes of the Crusade. Richard's motivations were driven by both piety and personal ambition. He saw the Crusade as a means to solidify his legacy and demonstrate his prowess as a warrior king. His bold and often reckless decisions, such as his daring attack on the city of Jaffa, showcased his willingness to take risks to achieve his goals. Philip II of France. Philip II of France, also known as Philip Augustus, was another key leader of the Crusade. Although his relationship with Richard was marked by rivalry and tension, Philip's participation was vital to the Crusade's initial successes. His contributions to the Siege of Acre were significant, and his presence lent considerable weight to the crusading effort. However, Philip's early departure from the campaign in 1191 due to political and personal reasons left Richard as the primary Christian leader in the Holy Land. Philip's return to France was motivated by a combination of health issues and the need to secure his political interests at home. His departure underscored the internal divisions and competing priorities that often plagued the Crusader leadership. Philip's departure had significant implications for the Crusade. It strained the already tenuous relationship between the remaining leaders and highlighted the challenges of maintaining a unified front. The rivalry between Richard and Philip also reflected the broader political dynamics of medieval Europe, where personal ambitions often intersected with broader geopolitical goals. Frederick I Barbarossa. The Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa also joined the Crusade, leading a large German contingent. Unfortunately, his untimely death in 1190 during the journey to the Holy Land dealt a significant blow to the Crusade's momentum. Frederick's death led to the dispersal of much of the German army, weakening the overall crusading force. Frederick's participation highlighted the broader European involvement in the Crusade and the logistical challenges of mobilizing and maintaining a large army across vast distances. His death was a significant setback, illustrating the unpredictable nature of such military expeditions and the impact of individual leaders on the course of events. Frederick's legacy as a crusader was marked by his determination and leadership. His death, however, underscored the fragility of medieval military campaigns and the importance of effective leadership. The loss of the German contingent weakened the crusading effort and highlighted the need for coordination and support among the various European powers. Saladin. On the Muslim side, Saladin was the central figure. His leadership, strategic acumen, and ability to unite the Muslim factions were instrumental in resisting the Christian forces. Saladin's conduct during the Crusade, particularly his chivalry and magnanimity, earned him a lasting legacy as one of the most respected figures of the medieval period. Saladin's strategies included both military and diplomatic efforts. He skillfully managed the resources of his empire, maintaining supply lines and fortifications to withstand the Crusader assaults. His ability to maintain the loyalty of his diverse forces and to negotiate with the Crusader leaders demonstrated his diplomatic prowess. Saladin's leadership was crucial in ensuring that the Muslim states could withstand the sustained pressure of the Crusade. Saladin's rise to power and his efforts to unify the Muslim states were key factors in his success. His strategic use of alliances and his ability to inspire loyalty among his troops were critical in his defense of Jerusalem and the surrounding territories. Saladin's legacy as a leader was marked by his ability to balance military prowess with diplomatic skill, ensuring the long-term stability of his realm. Major battles and campaigns. The Siege of Acre. The Siege of Acre, 1189 to 1191, was one of the longest and most grueling battles of the Third Crusade. Acre was a strategically important coastal city, and its capture was crucial for the Crusaders' plans to advance inland. The siege began with initial setbacks for the Crusaders, but the arrival of Richard the Lionheart and Philip II with reinforcements turned the tide. After months of intense fighting and a blockade that starved the city's defenders, Acre fell to the Crusaders in July 1191. The victory at Acre was a significant morale boost for the Crusaders, though it came at a high cost in terms of casualties and resources. The siege demonstrated the complexities of medieval siege warfare, including the use of siege engines, naval blockades, and the harsh conditions faced by both attackers and defenders. The fall of Acre also highlighted the importance of cooperation among the Crusader leaders, despite their rivalries, and the critical role of logistical support in sustaining a prolonged siege. The Siege of Acre was marked by a series of intense battles and skirmishes. The Crusaders employed various siege engines, including trebuchets and battering rams, to breach the city's defenses. The naval blockade, enforced by the fleets of Genoa, Pisa, and Venice, played a crucial role in cutting off supplies to the city's defenders. The fall of Acre was a turning point in the crusade, providing the Crusaders with a vital stronghold and base of operations. The city's capture also had symbolic significance, as it demonstrated the determination and resilience of the Crusader forces. The victory, however, came at a high cost, with significant casualties on both sides and the devastation of the city's infrastructure. The Battle of Arsuf. The Battle of Arsuf, 1191, was another critical engagement, showcasing Richard the Lionheart's military prowess. As the Crusader army marched towards Jaffa, they were repeatedly harassed by Saladin's forces. Richard's strategic patience and disciplined command culminated in a decisive counterattack near Arsuf, where the Crusaders inflicted heavy losses on Saladin's army. The victory at Arsuf secured the coastal route to Jaffa and bolstered the Crusaders' position in the Holy Land. The battle demonstrated the effectiveness of Richard's leadership and the tactical flexibility of the Crusader forces. The disciplined use of cavalry charges and the ability to adapt to the fluid battlefield conditions were key factors in the Crusaders' success. The Battle of Arsuf also underscored the challenges of maintaining a cohesive force in the face of constant harassment and the importance of securing supply lines and strategic positions. Richard's strategy during the march to Arsuf involved maintaining a tight formation to protect his forces from Saladin's attacks. The Crusader army's disciplined advance, combined with Richard's tactical acumen, enabled them to withstand the continuous assaults by Saladin's cavalry. The decisive moment came when Richard launched a well-coordinated counterattack, breaking through Saladin's lines and securing a crucial victory. The aftermath of the battle saw the Crusaders consolidate their position along the coast, securing key supply routes and preparing for the next phase of their campaign. The victory at Arsuf boosted the morale of the Crusader forces and demonstrated Richard's capability as a military leader. The battle also highlighted the strategic importance of maintaining control over key coastal positions, which allowed the Crusaders to support their operations and sustain their campaign. The March to Jerusalem. Following the success at Arsuf, the Crusaders advanced towards Jerusalem. However, logistical challenges, the harsh climate, and Saladin's scorched earth tactics hindered their progress. Despite reaching within sight of Jerusalem, Richard ultimately decided against a direct assault, recognizing the difficulties of maintaining a prolonged siege and the risk of a counterattack by Saladin. This decision, though pragmatic, led to frustration and disappointment among the Crusader ranks. The march to Jerusalem illustrated the strategic complexities of the campaign and the importance of logistical planning. Richard's decision to forego the assault on Jerusalem was influenced by the recognition that a successful siege would require sustained support and reinforcements, which were not guaranteed. This pragmatic approach, while controversial, reflected the broader strategic considerations that shaped the crusade. The decision not to assault Jerusalem was based on a careful assessment of the military and logistical challenges. The Crusader forces were stretched thin, and the supply lines were vulnerable to attacks by Saladin's forces. The harsh climate and terrain further complicated the logistics of sustaining a prolonged siege. Richard's decision to focus on securing strategic coastal positions, such as Ascalon, reflected his understanding of the broader strategic picture. The failure to capture Jerusalem was a significant blow to the Crusaders' morale, but it also underscored the importance of strategic decision-making in medieval warfare. Richard's focus on securing a stable base of operations along the coast ensured that the Crusader states could be sustained in the long term, even if the immediate objective of capturing Jerusalem was not achieved. The Treaty of Jaffa. The Third Crusade concluded with the Treaty of Jaffa in 1192. The treaty, negotiated between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, established a 3-year truce and allowed for Christian pilgrims to access Jerusalem safely. While the crusade did not achieve its primary objective of recapturing Jerusalem, the treaty secured a degree of stability and ensured the survival of the remaining Crusader states along the coast. The Treaty of Jaffa highlighted the role of diplomacy in medieval warfare and the recognition by both sides of the need for a temporary resolution. The terms of the treaty reflected the balance of power and the mutual recognition of each other's capabilities and limitations. The treaty also underscored the broader political and religious dynamics that influenced the crusade and the need for pragmatic solutions to complex conflicts. The negotiations leading to the treaty involved significant diplomatic efforts by both Richard and Saladin. The agreement to allow Christian pilgrims safe access to Jerusalem was a significant concession by Saladin, reflecting his willingness to compromise for the sake of stability. Richard's acceptance of the treaty, despite the failure to capture Jerusalem, demonstrated his pragmatic approach to the situation. The Treaty of Jaffa provided a temporary respite from the conflict and allowed both sides to regroup and consolidate their positions. The agreement also set the stage for future interactions between the Crusader states and the Muslim powers, highlighting the importance of diplomacy and negotiation in resolving conflicts. Historical analysis. Military strategies and tactics. The Third Crusade was marked by a clash of military strategies and tactics. The Crusaders, with their heavily armored knights and emphasis on direct combat, faced a formidable opponent in Saladin's agile and highly mobile forces. The battles of the Third Crusade highlighted the evolving nature of medieval warfare, where the importance of logistics, intelligence, and strategic planning became increasingly evident. Richard the Lionheart's ability to adapt to the conditions of the Holy Land and his tactical brilliance were key factors in the Crusaders' successes. The use of siege warfare, cavalry charges, and defensive fortifications were critical elements of the crusade. The Siege of Acre, for example, demonstrated the complexities of coordinating a prolonged siege, including the need for effective supply lines, communication, and cooperation among diverse forces. The Battle of Arsuf showcased the tactical flexibility of the Crusaders and the importance of disciplined leadership in the face of constant harassment. Saladin's strategies, on the other hand, emphasized mobility, the use of intelligence, and the strategic use of resources. His ability to conduct a successful defensive campaign against a numerically superior and well-armed foe highlighted the effectiveness of his tactics. The use of scorched earth tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and the strategic withdrawal to draw the Crusaders into vulnerable positions were key elements of Saladin's approach. Political and diplomatic dimensions. The political dynamics of the Third Crusade were complex, involving rivalries and alliances both within the Crusader ranks and with external powers. The tensions between Richard and Philip, as well as the competing interests of the various European states, often undermined the unity of the crusading effort. Diplomacy played a crucial role in the crusade, with Richard and Saladin engaging in negotiations that ultimately led to the Treaty of Jaffa. These diplomatic interactions reflected the pragmatism of both leaders, who recognized the limitations of their military capabilities and sought to secure a mutually acceptable resolution. The internal divisions among the Crusader leaders, including the rivalry between Richard and Philip, were significant obstacles to the success of the campaign. The departure of Philip and the subsequent lack of coordination among the remaining leaders illustrated the challenges of maintaining a unified front. Richard's diplomatic efforts, including negotiations with Saladin and efforts to secure support from local powers, were critical in achieving a temporary resolution through the Treaty of Jaffa. On the Muslim side, Saladin's ability to maintain unity among his diverse forces and to engage in diplomatic negotiations with the Crusaders was crucial. His recognition of the need for a temporary truce and the strategic concessions made in the Treaty of Jaffa reflected a pragmatic approach to the conflict. The treaty also demonstrated the broader political and religious considerations that influenced the crusade and the recognition by both sides of the need for a balanced resolution. Religious and cultural impact. The Third Crusade had profound religious and cultural implications. For the Christian world, the Crusade reaffirmed the enduring significance of the Holy Land and the deep-rooted desire to reclaim Jerusalem. The Crusade also reinforced the idea of holy war and the concept of chivalry, as epitomized by figures like Richard the Lionheart. On the Muslim side, Saladin's successful defense of Jerusalem solidified his status as a hero and symbol of Muslim resistance. The interactions between the Crusaders and the Muslim population during the Crusade also led to cultural exchanges, despite the prevailing hostilities. The religious motivations for the Crusade were deeply intertwined with the broader cultural and social dynamics of medieval Europe. The call to reclaim Jerusalem resonated with the deeply held beliefs and religious fervor of the time. The concept of holy war, as articulated by the papacy, provided a powerful justification for the Crusade and motivated many participants. The cultural exchanges that occurred during the Crusade, despite the hostilities, were significant. The interactions between the Crusaders and the local Muslim population led to the transfer of knowledge, technologies, and cultural practices. These exchanges had a lasting impact on both European and Middle Eastern societies, contributing to the broader processes of cultural diffusion and exchange that characterized the medieval period. Technological and cultural exchanges. The Third Crusade facilitated significant technological and cultural exchanges between the East and the West. The Crusaders were exposed to advanced Muslim military technologies, such as siege engines and fortification techniques, which they adopted and brought back to Europe. These technological exchanges had a lasting impact on European military architecture and engineering. Culturally, the interactions between the Crusaders and the Muslim populations led to the exchange of knowledge in various fields, including medicine, science, and philosophy. The translation and dissemination of Arabic texts into Latin played a crucial role in the intellectual revival of Europe during the High Middle Ages. The Crusade also exposed Europeans to new art, architecture, and culinary traditions, which influenced European culture in various ways. The technological exchanges were particularly significant in the fields of medicine and science. The Crusaders encountered advanced medical practices and treatments, which they adopted and brought back to Europe. The translation of Arabic medical texts into Latin facilitated the spread of medical knowledge and contributed to the development of European medicine. The cultural exchanges also had a profound impact on European art and architecture. The introduction of new artistic styles and techniques, influenced by Islamic art, enriched European artistic traditions. The adoption of new architectural elements, such as pointed arches and ribbed vaults, influenced the development of Gothic architecture in Europe. Long-term political consequences. The political consequences of the Third Crusade were far-reaching and long-lasting. The Crusade reinforced the authority and prestige of the participating monarchs, particularly Richard the Lionheart, whose exploits became legendary. The Crusade also highlighted the limitations of the papacy's ability to coordinate and control such large-scale military efforts, leading to changes in the relationship between the church and secular rulers. The failure to recapture Jerusalem and the subsequent Treaty of Jaffa underscored the complexities of the political situation in the Holy Land. The temporary truce established by the treaty provided a period of relative stability, but it also highlighted the need for ongoing negotiations and the recognition of the balance of power between the Christian and Muslim states. The Third Crusade set the stage for subsequent crusading efforts and the continued presence of Crusader states in the Levant. The political dynamics of the Crusade also had significant implications for the European states. The rivalry between Richard and Philip reflected broader political tensions in Europe, which continued to shape the relationships between the European powers. The Crusade also demonstrated the potential for cooperation among the European states, even in the face of internal rivalries and conflicts. The long-term political consequences of the Crusade were also evident in the relationship between the Crusader states and the Muslim powers. The Treaty of Jaffa established a framework for future interactions, highlighting the importance of diplomacy and negotiation in maintaining stability. The political and military strategies developed during the Third Crusade continued to influence subsequent crusading efforts and the broader geopolitical landscape of the medieval world. The legacy of the Third Crusade. The legacy of the Third Crusade is multifaceted and enduring. The Crusade left a lasting imprint on the collective memory of both the Christian and Muslim worlds. The heroic narratives of leaders like Richard the Lionheart and Saladin became part of the cultural heritage and historical consciousness of their respective societies. In the Christian world, the Third Crusade reinforced the idea of holy war and the concept of chivalry. The Crusade also contributed to the development of a shared European identity, as knights and soldiers from different regions came together for a common cause. The experiences and memories of the Crusade were transmitted through chronicles, songs, and literature, shaping the cultural and historical narrative of medieval Europe. In the Muslim world, Saladin's successful defense of Jerusalem and his chivalrous conduct became symbols of Muslim resistance and heroism. The Crusade also contributed to the consolidation of Muslim political and military power in the region, reinforcing the unity and identity of the Muslim states. The Third Crusade also had a lasting impact on the historiography of the medieval period. The detailed chronicles and accounts of the Crusade provided a rich source of information for subsequent historians and scholars. The analysis and interpretation of these sources have evolved over time, reflecting changing perspectives and methodological approaches in the study of medieval history. Modern interpretations and relevance. Modern interpretations of the Third Crusade continue to evolve, reflecting new historical methodologies and perspectives. Scholars have increasingly focused on the experiences of ordinary participants, the economic and logistical dimensions of the Crusade, and the broader cultural exchanges between the East and the West. The study of the Third Crusade has also benefited from interdisciplinary approaches, incorporating insights from archaeology, anthropology, and environmental history. The relevance of the Third Crusade in contemporary discussions of religious conflict, cultural exchange, and historical memory underscores its enduring significance. The Crusade serves as a historical case study for understanding the complexities of interfaith relations, the dynamics of military and political power, and the processes of cultural interaction and exchange. The examination of primary sources and the historiographical perspectives offer valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the Crusade. The legacy of the Third Crusade, reflected in the enduring historical and cultural significance of the events, continues to shape our understanding of medieval history. Historical sources and historiography. Primary sources. The primary sources for the Third Crusade include chronicles, letters, and official documents from both Christian and Muslim perspectives. Notable Christian chroniclers such as Ambrose, Roger of Howden, and the Itinerarium Peregrinorum et Gesta Regis Riccardi provide detailed accounts of the Crusades' events, highlighting the actions of key figures and the experiences of the Crusaders. Muslim sources, including the works of Baha ad-Din and Imad ad-Din, offer valuable insights into Saladin's strategies and the Muslim response to the Crusade. The Christian chronicles provide detailed narratives of the Crusade, emphasizing the valor and heroism of the Crusader leaders. These accounts often reflect the perspectives and biases of their authors, highlighting the religious motivations and justifications for the Crusade. The chronicles also provide valuable information on the logistics, strategies, and experiences of the Crusaders, offering a rich source of information for historians. The Muslim sources, on the other hand, offer a different perspective, emphasizing the strategies and leadership of Saladin. These accounts highlight the defensive efforts and the broader political and religious context of the Muslim response to the Crusade. The detailed descriptions of battles, negotiations, and the experiences of the Muslim forces provide a valuable counterpoint to the Christian narratives. Schools of historical thought. Historiography of the Third Crusade has evolved over time, reflecting different schools of thought and methodological approaches. Traditional narratives often focused on the heroism and valor of the Crusaders, with an emphasis on the exploits of Richard the Lionheart. However, modern historians have adopted more nuanced perspectives, considering the broader political, social, and economic context of the Crusade. Revisionist historians have challenged the romanticized portrayals of the Crusaders, highlighting the complex motivations behind the Crusade and the pragmatic decisions made by leaders like Richard and Saladin. Additionally, scholars have explored the experiences of ordinary participants, including soldiers, merchants, and pilgrims, to provide a more comprehensive understanding of the Crusade's impact on medieval society. The evolution of historiography on the Third Crusade reflects broader trends in the field of medieval history, including the shift towards social and cultural history, the focus on the experiences of ordinary participants, the examination of economic and logistical factors, and the consideration of cross-cultural interactions have enriched our understanding of the Crusade. The diverse perspectives and methodological approaches of modern historians have contributed to a more nuanced and comprehensive view of the Third Crusade. Conclusion. The Third Crusade was a defining moment in medieval history, characterized by its significant battles, influential leaders, and lasting impact on the Christian and Muslim worlds. Through a detailed analysis of the events, strategies, and historical sources, this essay has sought to provide a comprehensive understanding of the Third Crusade from the perspective of a professional historian. The Crusade's legacy continues to resonate, serving as a reminder of the enduring complexities of religious conflict, political ambition, and cultural exchange in the medieval period. Thanks for listening to Medieval Chronicles 1066. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out our Apple and Spotify podcasts for more medieval history adventures. Stay curious.
The 1095 Council of Clermont, catalyst of the First Crusade. The Council of Clermont, convened in November 1095 by Pope Urban II, stands as a pivotal event in medieval history. This gathering marked the initiation of the First Crusade, a military and religious campaign aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim control. The Council's resolutions and Urban II's impassioned appeal not only set the stage for centuries of crusading fervor but also reflected the complex interplay of religious, political, and social factors shaping medieval Europe. Let's explore the background, proceedings, and consequences of the Council of Clermont, demonstrating its profound impact on medieval Christendom. Background: contextualizing the Council. The Council of Clermont occurred during a period of significant upheaval and transformation in medieval Europe. By the late 11th century, Christendom faced both internal and external challenges. Internally, the investiture controversy between the papacy and secular rulers over the appointment of bishops had strained the Church's authority. The Gregorian reform movement, spearheaded by the papacy, aimed to centralize church power and enforce clerical discipline, yet this effort often clashed with the ambitions of secular rulers. Pope Urban II, elected in 1088, sought to reinforce the Church's supremacy while addressing the growing instability in Christendom. Externally, the Byzantine Empire, a bastion of Eastern Christianity, was reeling under the pressure of Turkish expansion following the pivotal Battle of Manzikert in 1071. This defeat had not only cost the Byzantines significant territory but also exposed their vulnerabilities to further incursions by the Seljuk Turks. Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos's appeal for military assistance to Pope Urban II underscored the dire situation and provided the papacy with an opportunity to mend relations between the eastern and western branches of Christianity, which had been fractured since the Great Schism of 1054. Additionally, the notion of pilgrimage to sacred sites, particularly Jerusalem, held immense spiritual significance in medieval Christian theology. The rise of Seljuk Turks had disrupted pilgrim access to the Holy Land, fueling resentment and a sense of urgency among Christians in Europe. Pilgrimage, long viewed as an act of penance and devotion, became a rallying point for Urban II, who presented the Crusade as an extension of this sacred tradition. Against this backdrop, Pope Urban II saw an opportunity to unify Christendom under the banner of a holy cause while addressing the Byzantine plea for aid. Proceedings of the Council. The Council of Clermont convened in southern France, attracting clergy, nobility, and laypersons from across Christendom. It was one of many councils called by Urban II during his tenure, but its significance transcended its local context. While the council addressed a range of ecclesiastical issues, including clerical discipline and the investiture controversy, its most significant moment came on November 27, 1095, when Pope Urban II delivered his momentous sermon. Although no verbatim transcript of his speech exists, multiple accounts provide insight into its themes and rhetoric. Chroniclers such as Fulcher of Chartres, Robert the Monk, and Baldric of Dole recorded versions of Urban's address, each emphasizing different aspects of his appeal. Urban framed the crusade as a sacred duty, emphasizing the need to defend fellow Christians in the East and liberate the Holy Land. He employed vivid imagery of suffering and desecration, painting the Muslims as a dire threat to Christendom. Urban's call resonated deeply with medieval audiences, as he promised spiritual rewards, including the remission of sins, for those who took up the cross. This theological incentive, coupled with the promise of adventure and potential material gain, proved a potent combination. Urban's speech also addressed broader societal tensions. By directing the martial energies of Europe's knights toward a common external enemy, the Pope sought to reduce internal conflicts that had plagued feudal societies. In doing so, he aligned religious objectives with pragmatic solutions to social instability. The Crusade thus emerged not only as a religious endeavor but also as a means of channeling the violence and ambition of feudal lords and knights into a collective mission. Key themes in Urban II's appeal. Urban II's sermon at Clermont encapsulated several themes that would characterize the Crusades. 1. Religious zeal. Urban depicted the Crusade as a divinely sanctioned mission, appealing to the deeply ingrained piety of medieval Christians. He invoked the imagery of Jerusalem as the spiritual heart of Christendom, emphasizing its desecration under Muslim control. 2. Christian unity. By emphasizing the shared Christian identity and the need to protect fellow believers, Urban sought to bridge the divide between Eastern and Western Christianity. This theme resonated with many, despite lingering tensions from the Great Schism. 3. Remission of sins. The promise of spiritual salvation became a central motivator, intertwining religious devotion with personal redemption. Urban's offer of a plenary indulgence for Crusaders marked a significant theological development, enhancing the appeal of the Crusade. 4. Chivalric ideals. Urban framed the Crusade as an opportunity for knights to demonstrate their valor in service of God, aligning religious duty with the ethos of knighthood. Immediate reactions and preparations. Urban's call to arms met with an enthusiastic response. Reports of the council suggest that the audience erupted in cries of Deus Vult. God wills it, a phrase that would become the rallying cry of the Crusades. Across Europe, the message spread rapidly through itinerant preachers and church networks, galvanizing support among all strata of society. The crusading movement that emerged was remarkably inclusive. While the knightly class formed the backbone of the military effort, large numbers of peasants, artisans, and clergy also joined. This mass mobilization, later referred to as the People's Crusade, underscored the depth of popular commitment to the cause, though it also highlighted the challenges of organizing such a diverse and often unruly force. Figures such as Peter the Hermit and Walter Sans-Avoir played key roles in rallying the common people, inspiring thousands to undertake the arduous journey to the Holy Land. However, the lack of coordination and resources among these early crusaders led to significant hardships, including famine, disease, and violent encounters along the way. Consequences of the Council of Clermont. The Council of Clermont and the subsequent launch of the First Crusade had far-reaching implications, reshaping the political, religious, and cultural landscape of medieval Europe and the broader Mediterranean world. 1. Religious impact. The Crusade reinforced the papacy's spiritual authority by positioning the Pope as the ultimate arbiter of Christian action. Urban II's leadership in mobilizing Christendom for a collective endeavor showcased the Church's capacity to unify diverse regions and peoples under a common purpose. Theologically, the Crusade cemented the concept of holy war in medieval Christianity, intertwining religious devotion with military action. This fusion would persist throughout the crusading era, influencing subsequent campaigns and shaping Christian-Muslim relations for centuries. 2. Political consequences. The Crusade marked a turning point in the relationship between Western Europe and the Byzantine Empire. While the initial aim was to assist the Byzantines, the eventual establishment of Latin states in the Levant, such as the Kingdom of Jerusalem, created tensions and rivalries that strained East-West relations. Domestically, the departure of numerous nobles and knights for the Holy Land led to shifts in power dynamics within European polities. Some rulers capitalized on the absence of crusading lords to consolidate their authority, while others grappled with the logistical and financial demands of supporting the expedition. 3. Social and cultural transformations. The First Crusade fostered a sense of pan-European identity, as participants from diverse regions came together under a shared religious banner. This nascent sense of unity, however, coexisted with growing antagonism toward non-Christians, particularly Jews and Muslims. The crusading spirit often fueled violent outbursts, such as the massacres of Jewish communities during the People's Crusade. Culturally, the Crusades facilitated exchanges between East and West, exposing Europeans to new ideas, technologies, and goods. These interactions, though fraught with conflict, contributed to the gradual transformation of medieval European society. 4. Long-term legacy. The success of the First Crusade in capturing Jerusalem in 1099 was hailed as a miraculous victory, solidifying the legacy of the Council of Clermont as the starting point of an epochal movement. However, the establishment of Crusader states also laid the groundwork for future conflicts, as the fragile footholds in the Levant faced constant pressure from Muslim forces. Critiques and controversies. While the Council of Clermont and the First Crusade are often viewed as triumphs of Christian unity and piety, they also invite critical scrutiny. The rhetoric employed by Urban II has been criticized for its polarizing and inflammatory nature, which exacerbated Christian-Muslim antagonism. Furthermore, the violent excesses of the crusading movement, including the slaughter of civilians, raise ethical questions about the means employed to achieve religious goals. Conclusion. The 1095 Council of Clermont was a transformative moment in medieval history, initiating a movement that would shape the course of European and Middle Eastern history for centuries. Pope Urban II's call to arms galvanized Christendom, channeling religious devotion, political ambition, and social energies into a campaign that transcended borders and social classes. While the Crusades brought both triumphs and tragedies, their origins at Clermont underscore the enduring power of faith and the complex motivations that drive historical change. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious.
Do you know why the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192, stands as one of the most significant military campaigns of the medieval period? Do you know who its notable leaders were and what its strategic battles were? Why did the Third Crusade have a profound impact on both the Christian and Muslim worlds? Let us delve into the origins, events, and outcomes of the Third Crusade, analyzing the perspectives of various historical sources and schools of thought to provide a comprehensive understanding of this pivotal conflict. Historical context and origins. The fall of Jerusalem. The catalyst for the Third Crusade was the fall of Jerusalem to Saladin in 1187. The city, which held immense religious significance for Christians, Jews, and Muslims, had been under Christian control since the First Crusade, 1096 to 1099. Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, unified the Muslim forces and recaptured Jerusalem after the decisive Battle of Hattin. This event sent shockwaves through Christendom, prompting Pope Gregory VIII to issue the papal bull Audita Tremendi, calling for a new crusade to reclaim the Holy Land. Jerusalem's significance cannot be overstated. For Christians, it was the site of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, while for Muslims, it was home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, the latter marking the spot from which Prophet Muhammad is believed to have ascended to heaven during the night journey. The fall of such a pivotal city not only had spiritual repercussions but also geopolitical ones, as it threatened the existence of the Crusader states established during the First Crusade. Motivations for the Crusade. The motivations behind the Third Crusade were multifaceted. Religious fervor and the desire to reclaim Jerusalem were primary driving forces. However, political and economic factors also played significant roles. European monarchs saw the Crusade as an opportunity to assert their dominance, gain prestige, and expand their territories. Additionally, the Crusade provided a means to channel the military energies of restless knights and nobles into a common cause. Religious zeal was fueled by the promise of indulgences, a concept propagated by the Church where those who took up the cross were granted remission of their sins. This spiritual incentive was compelling for many, offering eternal salvation in exchange for military service. Economically, the Crusade opened new avenues for trade and wealth acquisition. Italian city-states like Venice and Genoa, which provided naval support, saw the Crusade as an opportunity to expand their trade networks. The promise of spoils of war, land grants, and other material benefits also attracted many to the cause. The role of the papacy. The papacy played a critical role in the organization and promotion of the Third Crusade. Pope Gregory VIII's call for the Crusade emphasized the spiritual rewards for participants, including the remission of sins. This religious motivation was a powerful incentive for many crusaders. The papacy also facilitated the coordination and funding of the crusade, leveraging its influence across Europe to garner support from various monarchs and nobility. Papal bulls, sermons, and church decrees were instrumental in rallying support. The Church's involvement underscored the perceived divine mandate of the crusade, framing it as a holy war sanctioned by God. The papacy's ability to unite disparate European powers under a common religious cause was a testament to its influence during the medieval period. Political and social climate in Europe. The late 12th century was a period of political fragmentation and feudal conflict in Europe. The call for the Third Crusade provided a unifying cause that transcended local disputes and rivalries. Monarchs like Richard I of England and Philip II of France saw the Crusade as an opportunity to project their power and influence on an international stage. Feudal lords and knights were motivated by both piety and the promise of adventure and wealth. The social structure of feudal Europe, with its emphasis on martial prowess and loyalty to one's lord, aligned well with the crusading ethos. The Crusade offered a means for younger sons of nobility who had little prospect of inheriting land to gain wealth and status. The social and economic fabric of medieval Europe was deeply intertwined with the crusading movement. Towns and cities benefited from the increased demand for supplies and services, while the nobility leveraged the crusade to consolidate their power and influence. The promise of indulgences also appealed to the broader populace, who saw participation in the crusade as a way to secure their salvation. Thanks for listening to Medieval Chronicles 1066. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check out our Apple and Spotify podcast for more medieval history adventures. Stay curious.
The 1189 Siege of Acre, a turning point in the Third Crusade. The Siege of Acre, which began in 1189, was one of the most significant military engagements of the Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. This prolonged and intense siege, lasting nearly 2 years, involved Christian and Muslim forces locked in a battle that was both symbolically and strategically vital. Acre, a coastal city in the Levant, was of immense importance due to its strategic location and status as a major port for both the Crusader states and Islamic empires. The siege marked a crucial turning point in the Third Crusade, influencing the subsequent course of events and the eventual outcomes of the campaign. Let's explore the origins of the siege, the key figures involved, the military tactics employed by both sides, and the broader implications of the Siege of Acre for the Crusader states and the Islamic world. The prelude to the siege, the fall of Jerusalem and the call for a new crusade. The Siege of Acre must be understood within the context of the dramatic fall of Jerusalem in 1187. The Battle of Hattin, fought on July 4, 1187, saw the complete defeat of the Crusader army by the forces of Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt and Syria. The loss of Jerusalem, the holy city central to Christian religious fervor, caused a wave of shock and anger throughout Christendom. Pope Urban III is said to have died of shock upon hearing the news, and his successor, Pope Gregory VIII, issued the papal bull Audita Tremendi, calling for a new crusade to reclaim the holy sites. European monarchs, including Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick I, Barbarossa, responded to the call. Each monarch brought their own ambitions, armies, and resources to the endeavor, but they also faced internal political dynamics that influenced their participation. The fall of Jerusalem thus set the stage for the Third Crusade, and the Siege of Acre would become its first major test. The strategic importance of Acre. Acre, located on the northern coast of present-day Israel, was a major port city and one of the most prosperous cities in the Crusader Kingdom of Jerusalem. Its harbor was capable of accommodating large fleets, making it a crucial point of entry for supplies and reinforcements from Europe. Moreover, Acre was a gateway to the inland routes that led to Jerusalem and other significant territories. Control of Acre would provide the Crusaders with a strategic base for launching further campaigns in the Levant. For Saladin, holding Acre was equally important. The city not only provided a significant strategic advantage but also represented a symbol of Muslim resistance against the Crusader forces. By 1189, Acre had been under Muslim control for nearly 2 years following its capture by Saladin in 1187. The city's fortifications were strong, and it was garrisoned by a substantial force, prepared to withstand a prolonged siege. The decision to lay siege to Acre was not only a strategic military move but also a statement of intent by the Crusaders. Reclaiming Acre was crucial for their broader goal of recapturing Jerusalem. The beginning of the siege, Christian forces arrive. The Siege of Acre began on August 28, 1189, when Guy of Lusignan, the King of Jerusalem, a title disputed and weakened after his defeat at Hattin, led a force of Crusaders to the city. Guy had managed to gather a modest army, consisting of knights, foot soldiers, and a fleet of ships. His decision to march on Acre was partly driven by his desire to reassert his legitimacy as king and reclaim his honor after his defeat and imprisonment by Saladin. Upon arrival, Guy's forces set up camp on the hills surrounding Acre, beginning a blockade to cut off the city from outside support. However, the Crusader forces were initially too small to completely encircle the city, allowing the defenders of Acre to maintain supply lines with Saladin's larger army, camped a few miles to the east. Saladin was quick to recognize the threat and began to mount counterattacks to break the blockade, resulting in a series of skirmishes and small battles throughout the autumn of 1189. Saladin's response, reinforcements and counterattacks. Saladin responded swiftly to the siege, understanding the significance of Acre to both his strategic position and his authority as the defender of Islam against the Crusaders. he dispatched a force to relieve the city, engaging the Crusaders in a series of counterattacks aimed at breaking their lines and providing supplies and reinforcements to the besieged garrison. These counterattacks, while fierce, were largely unsuccessful in dislodging the Crusaders, who, despite their initial disadvantages, held firm around the city's perimeter. The stalemate continued as both sides fortified their positions. For Saladin, the priority was to sustain the morale and the supplies of Acre's defenders while avoiding a full-scale battle that might lead to unnecessary losses. The siege soon devolved into a protracted war of attrition, with each side seeking to outlast the other through blockades, limited engagements, and the maintenance of supply lines. The arrival of reinforcements, the balance of power shifts. The siege took on a new dimension in the spring of 1190, with the arrival of major Crusader reinforcements from Europe. Notably, forces under the command of Leopold V, Duke of Austria, and Philip II of France, augmented the besieging army. Richard the Lionheart, King of England, delayed his departure for several months but eventually arrived in June 1191, bringing with him a formidable contingent, including thousands of knights, men-at-arms, and naval support. Richard's arrival brought a renewed sense of purpose and energy to the Crusader camp. He was an experienced military commander, known for his courage and leadership on the battlefield. His presence not only bolstered the Crusader forces but also elevated morale, as he quickly took charge of the siege operations. Meanwhile, Philip II of France, although less inclined towards personal heroics, provided steady and vital support, contributing to the strengthening of the Crusader position. With these new arrivals, the Crusaders gained numerical superiority and began to establish a more effective blockade around Acre. This increased pressure on the defenders, as supplies within the city began to dwindle, and disease took a toll on both the besieged and the besiegers. The conditions within the city, a dire situation. Inside Acre, conditions were increasingly dire. The city's population, swollen by refugees and garrison forces, faced shortages of food, clean water, and medical supplies. Chroniclers describe scenes of starvation, disease, and death, with both combatants and non-combatants suffering terribly. The Muslim defenders, aware of the symbolic importance of holding Acre, continued to resist fiercely, launching sorties against the Crusader lines and enduring constant bombardment. Saladin, too, faced challenges. His army, camped nearby, was under strain from continuous skirmishes and the logistical difficulties of supplying a large force in the field. Despite his efforts to break the siege and relieve Acre, he found it increasingly difficult to make headway against the well-supplied and fortified Crusader encampments. This situation led to a bitter stalemate, with neither side able to secure a decisive victory. The siege intensifies, siege engines and naval blockades. As the siege dragged on into its second year, both sides employed a range of military tactics and technologies to gain the upper hand. The Crusaders constructed siege engines, including trebuchets and catapults, to batter Acre's formidable walls. Richard the Lionheart, in particular, is noted for his use of advanced siege techniques, employing engineers and craftsmen to build massive siege towers and machines capable of hurling stones and incendiary devices. The Crusaders also utilized their naval superiority to establish a blockade, cutting off Acre's access to the sea and limiting the ability of Muslim forces to resupply the city by water. This naval blockade, reinforced by Richard's fleet, proved crucial in tightening the noose around Acre and making it increasingly difficult for the defenders to hold out. Saladin, in turn, attempted to counter these moves by launching attacks against the Crusader fleets and sending reinforcements overland. However, the combined land and sea blockade gradually began to take its toll, and by the spring of 1191, the situation within Acre had become desperate. The fall of Acre, a Crusader victory. By July 1191, after nearly 2 years of brutal fighting, negotiation, and attrition, Acre's defenses finally began to crumble. Realizing the futility of continued resistance and facing the prospect of total destruction, the city's garrison agreed to surrender on July 12, 1191. The terms of surrender were harsh. The Muslim defenders were to be taken as prisoners, and a substantial ransom was to be paid to the Crusaders, including the release of Christian prisoners held by Saladin. The surrender of Acre marked a significant victory for the Crusaders and a blow to Saladin's prestige. However, the aftermath of the siege was marked by a grim episode that would further deepen the animosity between Christians and Muslims. When the agreed-upon ransom payments and prisoner exchanges were delayed, Richard the Lionheart ordered the execution of nearly 2,700 Muslim prisoners outside the walls of Acre. This act of brutality shocked even some of his contemporaries and ensured that the Third Crusade would continue with renewed ferocity. The aftermath and broader implications of the siege. The capture of Acre was a pivotal moment in the Third Crusade. It provided the Crusaders with a strategic base on the coast and a staging point for future operations against Saladin's forces. However, the victory at Acre did not lead directly to the recapture of Jerusalem. Internal divisions among the Crusader leaders, logistical challenges, and the strong resistance of Saladin's forces prevented a rapid advance on the Holy City. For Saladin, the loss of Acre was a significant setback, but it did not mark the end of his campaign. He remained a formidable opponent, capable of mustering large forces and employing effective strategies to counter the Crusader advances. The siege also demonstrated the resilience of Muslim forces and the complexity of Crusader-Muslim relations in the region, where military, political, and religious dynamics were intricately intertwined. Conclusion. The Siege of Acre, beginning in 1189 and concluding in 1191, stands as a defining moment in the Third Crusade. It exemplifies the intensity of the conflict between Christian and Muslim forces and the significance of Acre as a strategic and symbolic prize. The siege involved some of the most notable figures of the era, including Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, whose actions during this period left a lasting impact on the course of the crusade. While the capture of Acre was a major victory for the Crusaders, it also highlighted the complexities and challenges of sustaining a prolonged campaign in a foreign land, far from home. The Siege of Acre ultimately set the stage for the later stages of the Third Crusade, shaping the historical trajectory of both the Crusader states and the Muslim world. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious. The fall of the Templars, Pope Clement V and the papal bull Pastorales Preeminentiae. What do you know about the context, causes, and consequences of this pivotal event? The papal bull Pastorales Preeminentiae, issued by Pope Clement V in 1307, marked a critical turning point in medieval European history. It authorized the arrest of the Knights Templar, a powerful and wealthy religious military order whose rise and dramatic fall continues to capture the imagination of scholars and the public alike. By examining the Templars' meteoric rise, their suppression through political and religious intrigue, and their lasting cultural and historical legacy, we uncover the complex interplay of faith, power, and ambition that defined the era. Introduction: the end of an era. The Knights Templar, founded in 1119, embodied the dual ideals of faith and martial valor. For nearly 2 centuries, they played a central role in the Crusades, defending the Holy Land and safeguarding pilgrims traveling to sacred sites. Yet, by the early 14th century, the order faced extinction, accused of heresy and moral corruption. The issuance of Pastorales Preeminentiae by Pope Clement V in November 1307 formalized a process already set in motion by King Philip IV of France. The arrests and eventual dissolution of the Templars were as much about politics and economics as they were about faith. The suppression of the Templars was emblematic of broader shifts in medieval society, including the rise of centralized monarchies, the decline of the crusading spirit, and the increasing entanglement of religious institutions in secular politics. Let us examine the historical circumstances that led to the issuance of Pastorales Preeminentiae, its implementation across Christendom, and its far-reaching consequences. The rise and power of the Knights Templar. Founding and crusading zeal. The Knights Templar were founded during the aftermath of the First Crusade, a time of both triumph and uncertainty for Christendom. Pilgrims traveling to the newly established Christian states in the Holy Land faced numerous dangers, including banditry and attacks by Muslim forces. Hugh de Payens and a small group of knights sought to address this need by forming a military-religious order dedicated to protecting pilgrims. Their cause quickly gained support, and in 1129, the order received formal recognition at the Council of Troyes, backed by influential figures such as Bernard of Clairvaux. The Templars' structure reflected their dual mission. As monastic knights, they adhered to strict religious vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience while engaging in military campaigns to defend Christian territories. This unique blend of martial prowess and spiritual dedication made the Templars a vital part of the crusading movement. Wealth and influence. The Templars' successes on the battlefield were matched by their growing economic power. Over time, they acquired extensive landholdings across Europe and the Levant, often donated by nobles seeking spiritual rewards. The Templars developed sophisticated financial practices, including the use of letters of credit, which allowed pilgrims to deposit funds in one location and withdraw them elsewhere. This system laid the foundation for modern banking, making the Templars indispensable to the medieval economy. Their wealth and privileges, however, also set them apart and fueled resentment. The Templars' direct allegiance to the Pope exempted them from local laws and taxes, creating tensions with secular rulers. By the late 13th century, the Templars' military role had diminished with the loss of the Holy Land, leaving their financial activities as their primary function. This shift, combined with their secretive practices, made them an increasingly controversial institution. The political and religious context of 1307. The rise of centralized monarchies. The early 14th century was marked by the rise of powerful monarchies that sought to consolidate control over their territories and weaken the influence of independent institutions. King Philip IV of France exemplified this trend. Known for his ambition and cunning, Philip faced mounting financial pressures due to his wars with England and Flanders. His indebtedness to the Templars, who had become major creditors to the French crown, provided a powerful incentive to act against the order. Philip's broader campaign against the Church further contextualizes his actions. His disputes with Pope Boniface VIII, culminating in the infamous Anagni affair of 1303, demonstrated his willingness to challenge papal authority. The election of Clement V, a French pope, allowed Philip to exert greater influence over the papacy, setting the stage for the suppression of the Templars. Pope Clement V's struggles. Clement V inherited a church in crisis. As the first pope of the Avignon papacy, he faced criticism for his close ties to the French crown. Clement sought to balance his loyalty to Philip IV with his responsibility to maintain the Church's independence and moral authority. When Philip arrested Templars in France in October 1307, Clement was placed in an impossible position. By issuing pastorales preeminentiae, Clement attempted to reassert papal control over the investigation while avoiding a direct confrontation with Philip. The papal bull Pastorales Preeminentiae. Content and purpose. Issued on November 22, 1307, Pastorales Preeminentiae called for the arrest of all Templars within Christendom and the sequestration of their assets. The bull framed these actions as necessary to address allegations of heresy and moral corruption within the order. By extending the crackdown beyond France, Clement sought to present the investigation as a church-led effort rather than a royal vendetta. Implementation across Christendom. The reception of Pastorales Preeminentiae varied widely. In France, Philip IV's influence ensured swift and ruthless enforcement. Thousands of Templars were arrested, their properties confiscated, and their leaders subjected to brutal interrogations. In England, King Edward II initially resisted the bull, expressing doubts about the charges. However, under pressure from the Pope, he eventually ordered the arrest of Templars in 1308. In Portugal, King Denis adopted a more pragmatic approach, reorganizing the Templars into a new institution, the Order of Christ, which allowed their wealth and expertise to be retained under royal oversight. The trials and the fall of the Templars. Charges and confessions. The charges brought against the Templars were sensational, ranging from heresy and idolatry to blasphemy and sexual misconduct. Many of these accusations stemmed from rumors and misunderstandings about the Templars' secretive rituals, such as their initiation ceremonies. Under torture, some Templars confessed to these crimes, though their testimonies were often contradictory and implausible. The Council of Vienne and the dissolution of the order. In 1311, Pope Clement V convened the Council of Vienne to address the fate of the Templars. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, political pressure from Philip IV ensured that the council supported the dissolution of the order. In 1312, Clement issued the bull Vox in Excelso, formally disbanding the Templars and transferring their assets to the Knights Hospitaller. In practice, much of the wealth in France remained under royal control. The execution of Jacques de Molay. The suppression of the Templars reached its dramatic conclusion in 1314, when Jacques de Molay, the order's last Grand Master, was burned at the stake in Paris. According to legend, de Molay maintained the Templars' innocence until his death, cursing Philip IV and Clement V as he perished. Both men died within a year, further fueling myths about the Templars' persecution and martyrdom. Legacy and enduring impact. Economic and political consequences. The dissolution of the Templars disrupted Europe's financial networks, paving the way for the rise of new banking families such as the Medici and the Fuggers. Politically, the suppression demonstrated the growing power of centralized monarchies and their ability to challenge even the most privileged institutions. Cultural and mythological legacy. The dramatic downfall of the Templars gave rise to enduring myths and conspiracy theories. From tales of hidden treasures to their alleged connection with the Freemasons, the Templars have become a symbol of mystery and resistance against oppression. These narratives, while often speculative, highlight the order's enduring hold on the popular imagination. Conclusion: a cautionary tale. The suppression of the Knights Templar, formalized through pastorales preeminentiae, reflects the complex interplay of religion, politics, and economics in medieval Europe. The Templars' fall serves as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition, the fragility of even the most powerful institutions, and the enduring tension between faith and power. As we continue to grapple with these themes in the modern world, the story of the Templars offers valuable lessons about the human condition and the forces that shape history. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe to Medieval Chronicles 1066 for more journeys back to the Middle Ages. Stay curious. Have you heard that Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, was posthumously absolved of heresy? The story of Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, is one of tragedy, intrigue, and ultimate vindication. The Templar Order, once one of the most powerful and revered military orders in medieval Christendom, was brought to a sudden and dramatic end during Molay's tenure as Grand Master. His execution in 1314 marked not just the end of his life but also the symbolic demise of the Templars. However, the narrative did not conclude with his death. 7 centuries later, in 2007, Jacques de Molay was posthumously absolved of the heresy charges that had condemned him. Let's explore the life, trial, execution, and posthumous absolution of Jacques de Molay, reflecting on the significance of these events in the broader context of medieval and modern history. The rise of Jacques de Molay and the Knights Templar. Jacques de Molay was born in 1243 in the Free County of Burgundy, which is present-day France. He joined the Knights Templar in 1265 at a young age, inspired by the order's reputation for piety, discipline, and martial prowess. By 1292, Molay had risen through the ranks to become the Grand Master of the Order, leading it during a period of immense challenge and transformation. The Templar Order was founded in 1119 to protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. Over the centuries, it grew into a formidable military and financial organization, wielding considerable power across Europe and the Near East. However, by the late 13th century, the Crusades had largely failed, and the Templars, like other Crusader orders, were struggling to maintain their relevance and influence. Under Molay's leadership, the Templars sought to regroup and redefine their mission. However, the loss of Acre in 1291, the last Christian stronghold in the Holy Land, was a devastating blow to the order. The Templars retreated to Cyprus, where they attempted to rebuild and prepare for a new crusade that would never materialize. Despite these challenges, the Templars remained wealthy and powerful, owning vast estates and acting as bankers to monarchs across Europe, a fact that would ultimately contribute to their downfall. The fall of the Templars. The downfall of the Knights Templar is often attributed to the machinations of King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair. By the early 14th century, Philip found himself deeply indebted to the Templars, who had financed many of his military campaigns. Additionally, the Templars' independence and wealth posed a threat to his authority. Seeing an opportunity to eliminate this powerful rival and seize their assets, Philip began plotting against the order. On Friday, October 13, 1307, a date that would later become associated with superstition and fear, Philip ordered the arrest of Jacques de Molay and hundreds of other Templars across France. They were accused of heresy, idolatry, and various other crimes, including blasphemy and sodomy. These charges were based on dubious evidence, much of which was extracted under torture. The most damning accusation was that the Templars had renounced Christ and engaged in secret, heretical rituals. Under extreme duress, many Templars, including Molay, confessed to these charges, though Molay later recanted his confession, insisting that it had been obtained through torture. Despite his retraction, the damage was done. The confessions provided Philip with the pretext he needed to disband the order and confiscate its assets. The Pope, Clement V, who was heavily influenced by Philip, reluctantly agreed to dissolve the Templars in 1312 at the Council of Vienne, although he never officially condemned them as heretics. The execution of Jacques de Molay. In March 1314, after years of imprisonment and repeated interrogations, Jacques de Molay and other senior Templar leaders were sentenced to death by burning. On March 18, 1314, Molay was led to a scaffold on the Isle de la Cite in Paris, where he and Geoffrey de Charny, preceptor of Normandy, were to be executed. According to contemporary accounts, Molay maintained his innocence and the innocence of the Templar Order until the very end. He is said to have proclaimed from the flames that God would avenge their deaths, and legend has it that both King Philip and Pope Clement died within a year of his execution, seen by some as divine retribution. The death of Molay marked the end of the Knights Templar as a formal organization. However, the legacy of the Templars lived on in myth and legend, fueling speculation and conspiracy theories for centuries to come. For many, Molay became a symbol of steadfastness and martyrdom, an innocent victim of political machinations. The posthumous absolution. The charges against the Templars and Molay were widely believed for centuries, but there were always those who questioned the fairness of the trials and the veracity of the accusations. The medieval historian Jean Joinville, for example, expressed skepticism about the evidence presented against the Templars, and some contemporaries saw the trials as a thinly veiled effort by Philip to seize the order's wealth. In 2001, a remarkable discovery was made in the Vatican's secret archives, a document known as the Kainon Parchment. This document, dating back to August 1308, revealed that Pope Clement V had absolved Jacques de Molay and other Templar leaders of heresy after their initial confessions. The parchment indicated that Clement had intended to reform the order rather than dissolve it, but political pressure from King Philip had forced his hand. The discovery of the Kainon Parchment cast a new light on the Templar trials, suggesting that the order had been the victim of a grave injustice. In 2007, the Vatican officially acknowledged the Kainon Parchment and published it as part of a limited edition volume, effectively clearing the Templars and Molay of the heresy charges that had led to their downfall. This posthumous absolution, while largely symbolic, was significant. It corrected the historical record and recognized that the Templars had been unjustly condemned. The legacy of Jacques de Molay and the Knights Templar. The absolution of Jacques de Molay in 2007 did not just rehabilitate the image of one man, it also invited a re-examination of the broader historical narrative surrounding the Knights Templar. The Templars, long shrouded in mystery and controversy, have been variously portrayed as pious warriors, heretical conspirators, and tragic martyrs. The posthumous absolution of de Molay supports the view that the Templars were victims of a politically motivated campaign rather than genuine heretics. In the centuries since their dissolution, the Templars have become a fixture of popular culture and historical curiosity. They have been featured in countless books, films, and conspiracy theories, often depicted as guardians of secret knowledge or treasures. The mythologization of the Templars can be traced back to the dramatic events of the early 14th century, particularly the trials and execution of Molay. Jacques de Molay himself has become a symbol of loyalty and sacrifice. His refusal to confess to crimes he did not commit, even in the face of death, has been admired by many as an example of integrity and courage. The circumstances of his trial and execution, coupled with the subsequent absolution, have ensured that his name is remembered not just as the last Grand Master of the Templars, but also as a martyr to injustice. The life and legacy of Jacques de Molay offer a compelling glimpse into the complexities of medieval power, religion, and justice. As the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Molay presided over the order during one of the most turbulent periods in its history. His tragic death marked the end of the Templars as a powerful military and financial force, but it also sowed the seeds of a legend that would endure for centuries. The posthumous absolution of Molay and the Templars in 2007 was a significant moment in the reassessment of medieval history. It acknowledged the wrongful condemnation of the Templars and highlighted the extent to which political motives can shape the course of justice. For historians and the general public alike, the story of Jacques de Molay serves as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the enduring importance of truth and justice. Thanks for listening. Like and comment. And please subscribe, as that will help us get more videos out to those interested in the Middle Ages. See you next time on Medieval Chronicles 1066. Stay curious.